okay? So the first thing I want to start off with is focusing on this EPD. Can we make cattle better? I mean, I think if we did a survey in the room and not knowing how many of you are seed stock producers versus commercial cow-calf producers, you know, it's probably a fair bit of skepticism that we can really dramatically change cattle, okay? I mean, we tend to just see what goes on in our operations, and because change is slow, we sometimes lose perspective on how much we can change cattle. But the challenge really is putting together cattle that have the combination of traits that do the most for us. And the EPDs, we use a deal that was calculated back, oh, I think they've been touting this, Steve, for what, 20, 30 years, that EPDs or EBVs are 9 times more accurate than simply using weights and measures. If you come to a farm and you want to pick the bull that's the highest growth and all the animals are managed the same, it's pretty easy to figure out which bull gained the most. But now if you start to make comparisons between animals on that farm who were fed differently, it becomes very difficult, let alone to make comparisons between animals in different herds, in different seasons, even in different years, or in different countries under different management schemes. And what the EBVs allow us to do is allows us to find the animals that truly are different, not just based on their environment, but based on the genetics that are behind them. Remember, when you go buy a bull from a seed stock producer, you don't take home their environment, okay? Most people in the seed stock business are really good at managing animals. You come and all the animals look fat and pretty, right? But you don't take that management home. You just take the genetics home. And so what the EBV tries to get at is what is the underlying value. And one of the things that we're trying to do with EBVs is we're trying to beat genetic antagonisms. What's that mean? When we select for something we want, oftentimes something we don't want comes along with it. Okay, a great example of this is we like cattle that grow more, but oftentimes they have bigger birth weights, and that's associated with calving difficulty. So here's an antagonism. Can we find cattle that grow more but still calve easily? Okay. What about muscle and marbling? In our country, big premium today for marbling. Okay. Can we select cattle that have lots of muscle and lots of marbling at the same time? Those are genetic antagonisms. The good comes with the bad sometimes. So we want to find outliers that put it all together. I'll go back to let's see, 14 years ago, we were looking for bulls in the Angus breed that beat these two antagonisms. Low birth, high growth, high muscle, and high marbling. Carcass EBVs were just coming out. They were based on ultrasound measurements at that time. I sent a request to the Angus Association. I said, from your 250,000 cows in the breed, give me cows that beat these antagonisms, and I specified EPD levels and accuracies. Okay, so I wanted cattle that had actually had progeny, cows, and I wanted them to beat these antagonisms. And out of the 250,000 cows, they said there are 10 cows in the breed that meet your criteria. So there weren't very many, right? And one of them was the daughter of one of the other ones. Now, being a rocket scientist geneticist, I said, aha, 10 out of 250,000, 2 of them are related, and I know the guy that raised them, and I know where he lives, and I'm going to go see him. And so I went to see him, Bonneview Farms in South Dakota, and I bought the 2 cows. It took me 3 days. I had to stay with him for 3 days to convince him to sell me half the cows. He kept half, but I got him. And the young female had this bull as a young calf that had just been weaned, and he was up for sale that coming spring. And I remember talking to the head bull buyer for ABS Global, the semen company, and he's a friend of mine even after this. And I called him and I said, you know, did you see anything at Bonneview? Because you were there a couple of days before me. He said, well, there's that low birth weight bull, but I really didn't like him. What did you think of him? I said, I didn't like him either, Doug. And so we got him for just a few $1,000s in the sale. And 14 years later, this bull remains in the top 1% on marbling and the top 5% on ribeye. Okay? So he beat the genetic antagonisms. He was an outlier. Your chances of finding that bull without EPDs was nil. Okay? You couldn't do it. Okay? The tool is powerful. On birth weight, I think he's in the top 20% of the breed. On low birth weight, he's in the top 10% of the breed on yearling. So he beat both the antagonisms. Now, did every bull you looked at back then turn out that way? No, but the EPDs give you a chance to put together animals that defy logic, okay, that beat the antagonisms. That's why it's such a powerful tool, because those are the animals that make us the most money, okay? It is, in fact, the ones that defy the antagonisms. Okay, so what's the most important trait? If we're going to use EPDs to determine the traits, is it reproduction? Is it carcass merit? Is it structure? Is it efficiency? Is it growth rate? You know, for most of the history of cattle selection, since we've really had EBVs, which go back to the 80s, mostly we've made cattle grow faster. Okay, and I want to talk about one of the fallacies that I think are associated with the EBVs. Like all powerful tools, if they're used incorrectly, they put us in a pickle. Okay, and I call it the great EPD lie. In the United States, at least, I'm less familiar with the trends here genetically. In the United States, we chase bigger and bigger numbers. Okay, and so we want yearling growth rate. We want the animals to grow faster. And so if a 70 for yearling EPD was good, then 110 is even better. The problem is that there's a fallacy associated with that, because really, when you increase the growth rate, it leads to more output per head, which people want, right? We want more output per head. But it does not necessarily lead to more profit per head, or more output per acre, or more profit per acre. Okay? And if we think about it, do you really want output per head, or do you want profit per acre? Okay? Our main constraint is the acreage we control. We probably want to drive profit per acre. Profit per head is certainly more important than output per head. Okay? And the reason that selecting for growth doesn't lead to more profit per acre is because output is not profit. Okay? Output is simply revenue, and EPDs do, or EBVs measure output, but they generally don't measure cost. And there's a significant cost to these higher growth animals. They reach a larger weight at a given age. Is that because they eat the same and grow more? Why do animals have a higher growth EBV? What's the best explanation for why one bull weighs 1,400 pounds and another weighs 1,200? Fed the same ration on the same ranch under the same conditions? He eats more. That's absolutely the answer. Okay? I resemble that remark. I don't know why you guys are laughing. But the reality is that these animals that grow more eat more, and there's more cost associated with them. And surprise, surprise, as we select for bulls that grow more, and they produce progeny steers that grow more and heifers that grow more, and we turn those cows out in our pastures, those cows eat more and they get bigger, okay? And so as we select for higher growth EPDs, we get more feed consumed, we have more chance of reproductive failure, okay? And we have larger cow size. And so these are all hidden costs associated with greater growth rate, and we have to take those into account. Here's a graph that was done by some researchers in Arkansas, and it looked at, on the y-axis, the vertical axis, the percentage of the cow weight that was weaned versus the cow's weight on the x-axis. And that chart's pretty straightforward. What that says is the bigger a cow is, the lower percentage of her body weight she weans. Now, let's go back to our profit per acre scenario. You have a 50-acre plot. You can run a certain number of cows on it for the year. According to this plot, if you want to sell more pounds of calves at weaning, are you better off running more big cows or fewer big cows or more small cows? More small cows, okay? And that math works, and if you think about the slide in the marketplace, which pays you a higher price per pound for those lighter calves, this math works out pretty significantly in favor of the smaller cow.